We back? We back?
Yes, we are back.
I thought I was late. Yes.
Just gonna wait for Natalie to join us. Just gonna give a few more minutes for everyone to join the video.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for joining us on Zoom and on Facebook. My name is Sam, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Daniel and Natalie. So before we get started in this virtual environment, I'd just like to remind you to please keep yourself on mute during the event. Should you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the chat because we do want to hear from you. And it is also important to know that this event is being recorded as well. So we're so excited to get started with tonight's conversation on breaking the mold using creative arts to rebrand Black narratives. What we're looking to highlight in this discussion is the important role past and current Black creative arts industry professionals play in telling our stories, as well as to explore the power of stories in art and shaping new narratives. Whether we require a more strategic approach to changing the diversity prevailing narratives of Black peoples and Black communities, and if so, importantly, how the creative arts can be used to support that work. And then finally, what actions can we take as Black professionals to support this work going forward? So today, we got a super lit session tonight. We got three special guests. We got Mac Musa, songwriter, performing artist, music producer, fashion designer, motivational speaker, and at the head of his creative company, Heavy Zep Lifestyle. We've also got Gerard Etienne, employment equity and human rights advocate, diversity and inclusion expert, author, and also a human resource consultant. And then we've also got Dorothy Kanku, visual artist, curator, and the CEO of Drip and Paint. And she's also the creator of the art exhibition series called The Hustle Files, which will debut this Sunday, April 25th at the Collab Space in Nepean. Mac Musa will be performing as well at this event, so it'll be a great opportunity for you to see them both. And I'm going to pass it off to Daniel, who's going to do our land acknowledgement.
So our event is being streamed from Ottawa, which is located on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. YBP, the Young Black Professionals, would like to express our respect for all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The people of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have cared for and preserved this land, and they continue to do so. We're grateful for all the contributions, past and present. If you're joining us from somewhere else, we encourage you to do your own land acknowledgement at this time. I'd like to let Natalie tell us a bit more about this event and where it came from. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
There we go. Thank you, Daniel. Like Sam said, we're just so happy to actually have this conversation and finally have it. And I say finally because, this conversation initially came from a conversation that I was having with another panelist that was part of our Black Economic Empowerment event. His name is Ryan O'Neill Knight. And we were just having this discussion about some of the pitfalls some of the Black entrepreneurs are facing with regard to, obtaining loans or obtaining skilled workforce for their teams. And so we were thinking about, what is it? Like, what is it? Is it the perspective? Is it the stereotypes about, you know, Black workers, Black peoples, Black communities? And if that's the case, what can we do about it, right? And so Ryan is the co-founder of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. And so he put out a blog about this earlier this week, in fact. And so we will share that in the chat, and we'll also share that on our Facebook page for those of you who are interested in giving that a read. So really looking forward to having this conversation. And so I'm going to put this forward to our panel with the first question. So, you know, Nina Simone talked about, it's one of her famous quotes. It talks about an artist's duty being to reflect the times. And so my question to start this conversation off, and I will address Makhmousa first, what has been art's role in reflecting Black narratives in the past, and what is its role now? So you can speak to any part of that conversation, and then I'll ask the others to join in and add where they want.
The Nina Simone quote, that's a good touch, because I actually said that on my Rogers TV performance. Said Nina Simone said it's our responsibility to reflect the times. And there's a song that I wrote called Message to the World. And I always see, as like I said, I'm a vessel, right? And I always see like music and lyrics, it's like superpowers, or art or painting, or whatever you have, your talent is, it's like superpowers. And if we move intentional as artists, and we control our thoughts, we control our feelings, we control our actions, and we are more intentional in what we're creating, then we can inspire. You can inspire the uninspired. And you can like, with the right people behind you, you could move mountains. There was no impossible doesn't exist, man. And that's why I think it's so important for us to reflect the times, because instead of just looking at the time, if we put a mirror in front of the times, then people will probably just be like, whoa, we need to wake up, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's very important for us to reflect the times as creatives.
How about you, Jara? What do you think? What about what role was played in the past?
I want to expand the idea of art.
Mm-hmm.
Because in crafting our own narrative, quite often art has been seen as either painting, music, dancing. But I think in the context that Nina Simone was talking about, it is much larger.
Mm-hmm.
So a teacher can be an artist. Someone like me who earns a living through trying to change mind can be an artist. So in essence, an artist is taking what you are given, what you are good at, and make it meaningful. You know, lately, most of you now are quite familiar with the word woke.
Mm-hmm.
That's become a rallying cry for white Canada and white America to again craft the narrative for us. But the word woke comes from a man named Lead Belly in 1901, a Black singer who talked about Blacks needed to be woke at the turn of the Industrial Revolutions. And what he was talking about was how clear are we on the systems that are keeping us down. So to bring it to contemporary Nina Simone in terms of what is the work or the world of an artist, well, if it's not to challenge the system or rebuild a narrative, then art is meaningless. And in the legacy history of the world, some of the biggest changes that happened were done through art, however you define art, but were done through art. So I think as an artist, in terms of what I do, I have that responsibility to craft that narrative and to take us from what we have been given to what we want to give to ourselves. And that to me is the 2023 challenge.
Dorothy, do you want to take a stab at this question?
Sure. I'll think about music. Like for me, most of the main like rappers, female or male, right now, most of them promote violence or unethical or sexual behaviors in music that are Black. So that's how it reflects us on the world stage negatively. But I feel like we can only break that stigma ourselves. And like Makhmousa said, we can move mountains with art through our music, through our artwork. And I'm just blessed that I get to do that through my own artwork. So
can I add something to what Audrey just said? Because I think it's very much part of the conversation that we need to have. Rarely has Black people, artists, whether it's visual arts or music, been given a chance to tell their own story. A lot of the work that is done that is commercialized, very often it is other people that are benefiting. You know, the legacy history of whites and Jewish, and no, I'm not being an anti-Semite, but benefiting from Black art in the very early days, whether it was music or movies, there's still a legacy history of that. And that's why, Audrey, I appreciate so much what you said when you talk about how do you now do your own work. And it will be for us to figure out how to support you in the work that you're doing. But that desire for you to do your own work, that to me is where the real change will happen.
I think my next question, it comes around that, is it fair to say that despite the work that has been done to shift the diversity, shift and diversify the narrative of the Black people, would it be accurate to say that there's still a predominantly negative narrative about us among like the non-Black people? I'll give the question to Mac Musa.
You don't want to do that, brother. You don't want to do that. Not with that one. Don't do it. Not with that one. I say, that's the obvious, man. And what we need to do is being Black is just like, it's a privilege when you think about it too. Shout out to Charlemagne. Charlemagne has a book called Black Privilege. My wife bought that. And it's bad enough being Black is walking down the street and people being scared of you when you didn't do nothing. That's being Black. Being Black is, you know, we know the negative part. Let me say this. We know the negative part, but I think we should focus on the solution. What are we doing about that negative narrative? That's the correct question. Because the question you could say, yeah, oh yeah, I could tell you 1,000 things that stereotype with Black people. I know Black people are amazing healers. Black people are creatives. Black people are artists. Black people are doctors, lawyers, accountants. You know, we're all, like I say, we're magic. But I say, what are we doing about it? That's the real question. That's my question back to you. When you ask me that question, I'll tell you that. What are we doing about it?
Well, I think that's the answer that we're gonna get today, and it's well, what are we doing about it? But also, it is actually a question, like because we have to figure out and what has to be done about it. You know,
Thanks.
what's the right way that we can do something about it that's actually gonna give something, that's actually gonna give a result, because you know, you can let's say work smart, not hard. Of course, we do have to work hard no matter the case, but if it's worked intelligently, then it can and strategically, then hopefully it can give something, you know.
Thanks.
Does anybody else want to give their opinion on this question?
I certainly want to give a perspective, not an opinion, but a perspective, because I think that's a great question. And the perspective that I want to give, it's a heartfelt, I am sorry. From the lost generation to the generation of 1914, to the interbellum generation, to the greatest generation, to the silent generation, to the baby boomer generation, to the generation X, we did nothing to change that image of being Black is being a monkey, being stupid, being violent, having to go back to Africa and anything. Everything we did built on that. It would take millennials for the mindset in terms of perspective to start to change. In 1972, James Brown came up with a song called I'm Black and I'm Proud. That was the first time that Black people decided not to put dye in their hair and to grow an afro.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to wait until early 1980s for Spike Lee to come with some movies. And in one of the best movies ever, if you haven't seen it, is Do the Right Thing, where he's talking to Pino and he's telling Pino that who he admires is Prince and Jordan. And Pino says to him, but they're not niggers, they're nigger plus. Everyone who grew up in the 1980s, whether it was anything that was portraying Blacks, were always something negative and awful. The early days of rap, when you listen to songs like The Message or Tribe Called Quest, was trying to bring us a different message than the message of the bling bling, and we're gonna kill each other, and it's all about money.
Facts.
I am desperately hopeful, in answer to your question, that millennials and Gen Z have an opportunity. That's why I admired so much this conversation that we are having, because I don't know any other time in my lifetime where a group of people like you decided to have a conversation on how art can change the narrative. That to me is mind-blowing. I wish when I was your age, I could have thought about doing something like that. Instead, I internalized all of the crap. So there's a part of it where my generation of Blacks didn't do you any justice. We didn't fight hard enough to determine who we were. We accepted the labels that were given to us. Yeah. And when we fought, it was always individual fight. That means I made it. So therefore, you can make it. You're gonna hear that a lot in Black people of a certain age and a certain era. Mm-hmm. As much as we do or keep doing this, we are reinforcing to non-whites their narrative of us that we are living. And one thing
I'd like to say something after that. When you're done, I'd like to say something.
I'll say one final thing, I promise. What makes it so difficult is that in white America, including in white Canada, they decided that whites were different than visible minorities and Blacks are visible minorities. But in the construct of visible minorities, somebody from China, somebody from Japan, they still see us as an animal. It is deeply ingrained in the culture that we are less than. So it's not if we were fighting one mindset, is that we are fighting a global phenomenon that wants us to be less than, never recognizing that civilization started in Africa.
Heavy.
That's our challenge for the generations to come. Sorry, Musa, you turn.
No, it's blessed. I love to hear it. I love to hear it. You know, just to piggyback off what you're saying, shout out to Spike, because do the right thing. Those little quotes, that's the sages. That goes back to the wisdom. See, you can have knowledge. Knowledge is good to have. Knowledge is power, right? You can have knowledge or you can have wisdom also, because wisdom is the application of knowledge. I swear I was around Christians my whole life. I got a long Muslim name. I'm not Muslim today. My pops was Muslim in the 80s. Now he's Jewish. He's like Kabbalist, whatever. Wherever he is, God bless him. You know what I'm saying? But what I see in that, it's not about the label. It's not about Black, white. It's about the wisdom. It's about how are we moving? And when I'm saying that to you, it's not to ask you that question, is like to be rude or anything. It's to challenge the mind, right? Because if you look at, we always had artists that was coming and they was giving us Bob Marley, One Love. We had Biggie. Biggie said, because I went from negative to positive and it's all good. That's alchemy. That's turning negative to positive. It's all good, baby, baby. Then you had Tupac. Tupac said, I'm not a nigga. I'm not a nigger, which is the ignorant. Tupac said, nigga, never ignorant, getting goals accomplished. N-I-G-G-A. That's history that they're trying to erase. And that's why those artworks are so important, because if we forget where we come from, how are we going to know where we're going? So, yeah, that's what I say. What are we doing about it? We've been having that conversation. How do we elevate from that? For sure.
But note that the references that you make are not the references that quote unquote control the world. The world is still controlled by the last generation
Of course. Of course. That's why I don't even try to like hype that, you know, but like it's
and I'm saying to you that despite quote unquote our best efforts, we were still encased in a logic, because the question that Sam asked was, can art change the view of whites? And my comment is, my generation of Blacks kept contributing to that view of whites because we denounced our own, and we went through some kind of individual exceptionalism. Look at me. We didn't say look at us. It was look at me, look at what I have, look at the house that I have, look at the things that I've done, and not realizing that we're penalizing ourselves, because when I walk down the street of my neighborhood, the white person looking at me doesn't know anything except that they see a color. So the generation of Blacks, we didn't do enough. And I'm saying to you organizing this event, pride, because you're doing something that I wish in my days we would have done more in talking about how do we change our own narrative. And Musa, that's why I like so much listening to you.
Blessings, man.
Good example you're giving. This is you about saying, how do I change my narrative? I'm not allow others to define me. I want to define myself. And that's
facts.
The real fight that is waiting for us moving forward.
Yep.
I would like to add something if I can, sorry.
Yes, Dorothy, go ahead, please.
I hope it answers your question, Daniel, like about the for me is in an art sense, the exploitation through music and art happening right now in our generation. I feel like we don't control our own narrative. The majority of art museums or record labels are controlled by non-Black people. For me, hip hop is art, in my opinion. So I don't know, how can we elevate if we're not in a position of power and can't control our own narrative? I think that it could help to shift something if we were more in a position of power to do something like that. So like Magnus said, it's time we focus on the solution and not the problem.
Facts.
So it's established, right? So we have this negative narrative, these stereotypes that are prevailing about Black people, Black communities. And we know it stems from like a historical, intentional marketing, almost PR against Black folks, right? So things from, birth of the nation, the white man's burden, all those things that they said about Black people were not smart. They had scientific evidence of that, even down to, that model minority myth and the problematic minority, which is us, right? So understanding all these things, and that's a huge historical piece to move on and to impact. I would imagine what you guys are saying is that we do need a strategic, very intentional push to change that narrative. And I like the word rebrand, but I also have problems with the word rebrand. But I'll say, do we need to rebrand ourselves? Is that the push that we need to do moving forward? Is that we're intentionally, strategically looking to rebrand Black peoples and Black communities?
I could answer that. Ladies first.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. About that, I feel like realistically, we just need to unite and stay united. Other races do it for us because they don't want us to unite to begin with. And there's already the narrative that we're violent, low income, monkeys, a threat to police, or a threat to someone, just knocking on the wrong door and getting shot in the head, for centuries it's been happening. So most of the time really we do it to ourselves, if we can be honest. For example, in the arts field as well, we don't always want to support other Black people. And it's sad to say, one Black brother or sister hates on the other instead of supporting that new business venture they have. Or they can also be your friend, or just someone trying to make it that looks like me. and is working hard and trying to get somewhere higher than to a higher level than they are right now. So why not just support that person in those ventures by for free, sharing their work on social media, buying their artwork, streaming their music, or even putting their name in opportunities. I don't see it happening as often. So that's why I said we kind of do it to ourselves sometimes. So yeah.
Heavy. That's facts.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me support so much what you're saying. So I was invited to narrate a number of events for Black History Month for Infrastructure Canada. But the first thing that I did was go find Black artists. I stumbled by luck on a man named Eddie Larty. Eddie Larty had gone to Brazil and won a slam poetry contest that was international. So now I don't do any kind of events where I'm asked to narrate, where I don't go get someone like Eddie Larty to do a 15, 20 minutes before I do the main thing. And it goes back to my harsh criticism of people of my generation. When you had a Black person ascending level to become an executive, they were so fearful to be discovered as being Black that they actually closed the door behind them and didn't do the effort to go pull up.
That's facts.
All the community does. We did not do it. When I said earlier, I apologize to all of you, I mean it, because I know what people have done and have not done. There are enough capacity amongst Blacks in Canada that I should be able to look at the art of Musa and say, I'm going to invest in that art, in that artist.
Yes.
But these folks rather go buy white art.
That's facts.
And this is my people, this is my generation. That means we have done enough to have the capacity to support our own community without a lot of effort. And yet we walk away from that very community. So the question that you've asked, I think it's a brilliant question, meaning how do we look to the future and how do we find solutions? And I'm going to suggest painfully that I would start putting the emphasis, honestly, on Gen Zs and Gen Alpha. So as opposed to trying to go and undo years, decades of colonization that got me to internalize, excuse the language, I'm amongst friends, I apologize, the word. I did a session with my son, Gérard Hubert, and it was for an organization within the Federal Public Service. And what I said to him at that time was, he is a Black man and I'm a nigger. So what he managed to do was to have a good conscience of being Black and what it means. But I internalized the word because from the moment I landed in Canada, that word was branded on my skin. And it doesn't matter how many degrees I have. It doesn't matter the ranks I've rose in organizations. It doesn't matter how much money I have, but it is branded on my skin from my earliest recollection of Benoit de Niverville calling me a jungle bunny. So you could want to spend a lot of effort trying to undo that, or you could put that same effort on Gen Alphas, Gen Zs, even Gen Ys, where honestly, they have the understanding of being different, but they haven't yet internalized the narrative of the N-word, because even the N-word was given to us as some kind of a gift to allow white people to say it without feeling that they're saying it. So if I'm looking at the future, every effort that we can make to help that upcoming group, you know, the people from 1980 onwards, I think that would be a better investment than trying to convert people from 1980 before. I think that group, honestly, I think they're gone. I'll let you have your own opinion, but they're done.
Yeah.
There's a lot said right there. There was a lot said. So in terms of rebranding ourselves and how we accomplish that. So part of it you're saying is to, I heard unity, we need to unify. I also heard that we need to focus on the younger generation and ensure that what they're taking in isn't the same narratives, right? And so how do we go about doing that though? Like, what are the narratives that you guys think that we need to be pushing forward? Is it enough to just have diverse narratives? Like, we're not a monolith, obviously. We're not the things that they say we are. But what are those things that you guys envision if we're rebranding ourselves so that people take on a different view of who Black people are? When you say Black people, the first things that come to mind aren't those negative things. You know, when we go for a loan, or, you know, we go for that mortgage, or we just walk into a store, or we knock on that door, those negative things aren't the first things, you know, that come to mind. So like, what do those steps look like in terms of our creative arts professionals? Like, how do you guys impact that? What are those first steps?
I cannot talk about everyone, but I can talk about myself. There's 12 of you on this call. I am on LinkedIn, you can find me. In about another 11 months, there's gonna be something called Black History Month, because even Black History Month is something that was given to us, the narrative made by someone else. So there are more likely kids knowing of Martin Luther King than of Toussaint Louverture and of Jean-Jacques Dessalines. So every hero that we have has been given to us. So how do we change that narrative? I am looking forward for what I can do. I cannot suggest to you that everybody will do that, but I can promise to you that the next time the government comes knocking on my door because they want me to do a number of events for a particular department, every single one of you will be a part of it.
Slow.
I can tell you for a fact that when Black History Month comes, I'm going to get involved in school systems that have predominantly Black children to talk about Black history, as opposed to a white teacher telling them that Martin Luther King was good and Malcolm X was bad. So there is an active effort that we can do individually. And as the saying goes, the idea is not to say I'm going to change the world. Nobody can. But you can make a difference in one person's life. So the young man, woman, by gender fluid, that's going to listen to one of you talk about art as a means of creating the narrative, who knows what this person may become 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Who knows the kind of confidence that they may have when they walk into a bank and ask for a loan? Who knows how they may be heavy by showing that confidence? I think that's the way we start making the change, because I don't know how else, and I'm looking forward to my colleagues to correct me, but I think we need to make a personal commitment. And that was the essence of the conversation today. How does art shift the narrative? As artists, we make a personal commitment. I've made a personal commitment. I'm going to do something that is fundamentally different and that can build on a positive narrative as opposed to negative narrative that I inherited.
Facts. What you focus on is what amplifies. So if we only focus on the negative, we'll be amplifying that. But if we educate ourselves, empower ourselves, from this moment on, we do our part in every part of our lives. And like he said, you don't need to change the whole world at one time. You just got to change your world. And then in turn, that spreads. That's contagious. That energy is contagious. But definitely educate and empower ourselves. Self-education is self-preservation. Put it that way. That's a Mahmoud original. Self-education is self-preservation. that
Agree.
literally kept me alive for a long time, you know? Yeah.
And that's probably one of the saddest part of our history in North America, is that self-education has been taken away from us in every possible way. You know, this is the young Black professionals. So we're talking about, as artists, how do we build capacity? But the reality is, Black people were always people who understand commerce, who understand economics, who understand markets. You know, I was the first Black person to be a vice president at a major bank, that was TD Bank 15 years ago. When I was at TD Bank, I was making an argument that the white people selling stocks that were making $800,000 a year had the exact same competencies with Black kids selling weed. The products were different, but the skill sets were the same. Now,
definitely.
the bank couldn't wrap their mind around this idea that whether you sell stocks or whether you sell weed, you still have a client group, you still have a product, you still have this, so there's no difference.
Facts.
What I wanted to send as a message was this idea of, we have the skill set, we have the education. I used to meet guys selling weed that could do calculus in their head in a way that for me, I needed to take a calculator to try to understand what was the number. And yet they could do it in an instant. We have all the things that we need. That's what you were saying earlier about Musa. We have it. We're good to go.
Yes, we are. That's why I'm so good at marketing now, because I've like that survival mode instinct, you know what I'm saying? Once you understand you have to sell, if there's a book called The Greatest Salesman in the World, and I think everybody in this call should go pick up that book. You go read that book, and it says the underlying, it's not about sales. A lot of people think it's about making money and just selling. But right now, I've never went to college for marketing, but I provide marketing for businesses and artists right now in America and Canada. Right now, our biggest client that we just had was Cide Collegial. We just had that client. And on the first day that they raised money this year, they said they made $20,000 more because of our company, what we've done, because of our marketing. And just imagine that. That's what, imagine we applied that in our community. If Cide Collegial could see our company and like say, you know what, Heavy Zeb, they have the best marketing right now in the community. Let's help them build the businesses and like do the marketing for the bit. That's how let me invest in my community. Let me help my community. The opportunities don't just have to come from that side. They can come from us. And that's what the Jews, Chinese, everybody does. They always think about each other. Like, instead of being competition, like she said, instead of being competition or like hating on each other, my brother Gerald said it best. I'm going to do what I can. Whenever I get a call, I'm going to pass that branch, extend that branch, you know? And for anybody on this call, you can go to heavyzep.com and you can see what we provide. I'm happy to help the community with that. And Daniel knows I'm on this call right now. That's what I'm doing. I'm extending the olive branch. Just that's how it spreads out. But yes, I don't want to dip on it. I don't like talking too much. So if I talk too much, please let me know. I'm not really a talker. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that as well a bit. And again, I hope it answers the question. But in terms of like narratives, I feel like we have a choice. We can listen to the narratives thrown against us, but not necessarily let them define who we are, and instead use it as power to make it a positive thing for us. So in our music and our arts, let's stop glorifying guns and Glocks and drugs and music. I don't think the best solution is to really like necessarily try and change an industry or cooperation that's already kind of rotten to its core, that has already decided that this is what we are. And so we start to live to change people's minds rather than becoming legacy builders. And instead, we should try and build our own narrative, and meaning focusing on what we can do now to elevate us and trying to be of positive impact to the next person, who can learn from that and that can change their life. And I always tell people that I'd rather be remembered as someone who was impactful than who had all the money, had all the cars and all that stuff. That's like they gonna forget about you in like 5 days. But if you are an impactful person like Malcolm X, all of these legends that are remembered a decade later, 3 decades later, that's how I want to be remembered. So that's what I'm going towards, if that makes sense.
Oh God, it does make so much sense. By the way, you know that Malcolm X is Canadian, eh? You know that. His parents, his upbringing was here in Canada before he moved to the States. But
Are
you
you
know,
serious?
yeah. He's
Okay.
Canadian. But this sense of my value is derived from helping someone else. That's the thing that a system that tells us, you know, if you're from the Caribbean, we have the analogy of crab in the bucket. It's a system. When I say to you that my time, people of my time, I don't give much hope. It's how deeply ingrained in our mind was this idea of separating us from ourselves. So this sense of what you're talking about now that I love so much is that true value, true worth is how do I make a difference in someone's life? For someone like me, that came way too late. That came after I left the public service. As Natalie said, I have the scars to show that when I was working in the public service, I tried to do my best, but that my best wasn't good enough. The system tends to victimize people who raise their voices to say something is wrong. And I thought something was wrong. I went back to school to do a PhD, not because I wanted a little piece of paper or acronym after my name. It's because I thought that there was a truth that I needed to say about Black people in the public service that was better said as Dr. Etienne than as Gérard Etienne. So I went back to school. But in all of those things I have done over the past 5 years, they were never for self-aggrandizement. They were never because I was looking for money or for recognition. I got to a point in life when I understood that my true value walking on this earth was the extent to which I can help someone else, regardless of what happens to me. The pleasure is in helping someone else. And that sense that you're talking about, my God, when we're doing the future visioning of how do we change the narrative, if we could get that mindset to be established in our community, that would make such a powerful, powerful difference. On a final anecdote, and then I'll shut up because just like Musa said, I hope I'm not talking too much.
No, it's all up.
I went to a hotel yesterday night. I was in Montreal for a meeting this morning. And when I got there, they were asking a Black person that was in front of me for a credit card so they could put somehow a hold for any incident that could happen in the room. And the person said, I don't have a credit card because the room was booked by my company. So I thought everything was handled. So the woman at the desk was talking to this person saying, sorry, we need a credit card. And I just walked up and I say, here's my credit card. You can put his incidentals on my room. The woman said, well, do you know him? I said, no, I don't, but he's Black.
Yeah, that's that mentality right there. That's it right there. That's the sum of this whole conversation right there. Right there.
So I trust him because it's $150 that they're gonna put. For the sake of argument, let's say this man used my $150. The issue is with him, not with me. But I couldn't be there listening to this conversation and not step up. That's what I mean by you don't have to try to change the world. You can make a difference for someone next to you without expecting anything in return. And that's the very thing that we need to build as a community that I don't think we have now.
Facts.
A lot of separation, indeed, fractioning. My next question, in line with that, we were talking about. Initially, we started talking about strategy, and but yes. So, what challenges are we facing when it comes to like changing our reputation as the Black community? Because the way I see it, like if the people, like let's say in power, let's say we're talking about here in North America, whether it be the corporations or the government, if they benefit from the current from the current narrative as they have in the past, more explicitly, if they're not in favor of this narrative about the Black community changing, it becomes more of an uphill battle. It's like swimming against the current. So my question is it a losing battle to try to break the negative Black stereotypes here in America? Is it like kind of like at the casino? You can't win against the casino, you know, the house always wins, or the White House. Audrey, would you like? Dorothy, would you like to jump on this question first?
For me, I don't think it's a losing, I mean, not necessarily like a losing cause. I think, and I'm a firm believer that whatever the devil can do, God can do so much greater. So
Heavy. Heavy.
so like I said before, like, you know, I feel like people, there's, especially, you know, non-colored people for decades, centuries, they've already decided what we are. They decided that that's what we are, and a lot of them will not change it. So it's like, that's why I said not to, I don't want to be a person of color who lives to try and convince them that I'm what I know that I am, because it just takes away from, you know, trying to be the impact that I'm trying to be, and instead living for them and living to convince people for the rest of your life. I feel like we've been dealing with that for centuries already. And I feel like, I mean, it is a bit of a battle, but all I'm saying is like, what am I going to do about it? Because I'm still alive. So I have a choice. Let that get to me and let that shut me down. And like, I live to, you know, I live to, what's it called? I live to try and convince people, or I live to listen to what they're saying and fight every day to convince them of this and this and this, or I can choose to continue my life and be a positive impact and try my best to even touch one person, or get even one person to, I guess, not really necessarily get them to change their narrative on us, but like it's really through action and not really words. Because I can go on the street with a big mic saying, I'm not a nigger, I'm not this, they still gonna see me that way. So, you know what I mean?
Facts.
Danielle, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to disagree with you on the premise of the question. Danielle, okay, we have been winning for 600 plus years. We've been fighting a system that was designed to completely destroy us. And you here, today we're having this conversation. When I think of the generations that came before us and the things that people have gone through, and we are still here, we are still in the fight, I think we're beating the house.
Talk to him. Talk to him. Can I get a witness? Like tell him.
I do like that. I do like that. I do
change
like
the
that.
narrative,
Right,
brother. Change the narrative.
That's changing it right there. That's changing it right there. I love that.
No la. We here. We here.
You know what? I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna say, in terms of changing the narrative in a significant way, I think we're at a critical moment, an opportunity in history that we haven't had before. With the new technologies that have come, what I've noticed is that all the big media platforms, cinema, music, radio, journalism, they've all come tumbling down through technologies. For example, we always hear about every month or every year there's a new newspaper, there's a different newspaper that says, okay, we're not even printing anymore. We've given up on that. It's gone to, because now there's microblogging, for example, Twitter. And then you've got like the cinema, right? We used to be in what was on TV or what was on the cinema, but now we've got Netflix, we've got Disney, we've got Crave, we've got a new one every month, right? These are competitors that are cutting down the monopolies at the knees, And in the music industry, it's the same, when they came with the MP3s, and then after that, then they came with now we've got like radio, online radio. We have access to like 100 channels, so we don't have to listen to the mainstream of our city. For example, like for Ottawa people, we've got the 89.9 and the Jump 106, but there's we don't even have to listen to those, and we can listen to radio all day. And I was listening. Actually, I was listening to 89.9 though the other day, and I heard a song, and I heard it on these songs that are on TikTok, and then they end up on the radio. And I'm like, oh man, how is this TikTok stuff getting on the radio? It's everywhere. But then I realized it's the outcome of a more, how can I say, a more democratic form of media, because this is the music that gets picked up, on these reels, or on that people choose to make popular. These aren't the songs that the industry, the corporate music entertainment industry chose to make popular. It's the ones that the audience chose for themselves, because the top 40 is not, for those like Mac Musa in the music industry, the top 40 is not the audience's top 40, it's the industry's top 40. So yeah. I'm seeing that it's like a critical moment in history where all the media is now, it's the public that's in control of the message, because all these platforms that control the message before are being destroyed, are being brought down to their knees. So that's my opinion.
Can I promise last time, because we only have 6 minutes left, can I slightly disagree again?
Yes.
So there's movement in the market, but it's the same old damn bastards that control the market. If I go on Google and I'm looking for something, it's not the positive images of blacks that are gonna come up. Google will decide through their algorithm what information that they're gonna feed me. Now, the point where I totally agree with you, we as a community need to become more skilled. There's this statement that said, you will never be able to destroy the master's house with the master's tools, but you can renovate the house with the master's tools. And I think using this that we are using right now, it's using properly the master's tools to build a narrative. You would think that in such a conversation amongst us, if we are truly understanding of what the community is, there should be students from high school. There should be teachers listening in. There should be academics, professionals participating in. We haven't yet mastered the tool in a way that allows us to have that kind of platform and forum. So I agree with you. We have democratized information in an important way. But us as a community, we have not yet learned how to use those tools. And every single tool that exists it's owned by Elon Musk or by Jeff Bezos. Elon Musk is developing algorithm for cars to self-drive, and those algorithms will allow the car to kill a black person as opposed to injure. And I'm not being comical. I'm just saying to you, that's the conversation being had now in terms of smart cars. If they had to protect the life of the passenger or hit a Black family, what would the car do? But the people programming the car tend to be white. So they are inserting that kind of mindset even into AIs. So all I'm saying to you is this: I agree with you. Huge opportunity. But we have not yet, as a people, understand how to leverage that opportunity.
Leverage effectively.
Effectively.
So if I could just get like one person to respond to this question, because time is running. So we know we need to, rebrand. We need to focus on ourselves, that self-education, self-actualization. We need to help each other. So the rebranding really, from what I'm hearing you guys say, starts with us. It starts with the community. Who have you seen do this work already? Like, who is doing a good job of this that we can replicate and emulate?
Power to a woman. She gets to see the final word.
Heavy.
Are you talking about me? Okay, really quickly, me as an artist who loves like music that talks about real life, scenarios that give a positive message. Off the top of my head, there's Mac Musa, of course, and there is my boy Noir Doré. So I feel like they both talk about the Black realities and real life stuff that could spark very important conversations that a lot of people avoid having or that don't like having. And just they're always uplifting people through their music. And I just love how they use their creativity to give a message, I think that's really important. Like, if you have a creative gift, use it in a way that it can be impactful than just being music or just being art. So I really appreciate that. And yeah.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to throw this back to Sam with a quick wrap up. But obviously, Denise wants to know whether or not we have time for audience questions. Listen, we're on here till 8:30 really, but we set it up till 8. But I'll give you I'll open up just turn on your mic if you have a question.
Yes, absolutely. So just want to thank the panelists and YBP. And I have a question as it relates to the topic at the very front. Spiritually and emotionally, the arts do have a balm for the Black community's trials, tribulations, triumphs, travails, you name it all. The one thing I would like the three panelists to reflect on when we talk about the systems that were built not to support the narratives is the financial systems, the support for creative artists, because, people got to feed their family, but also telling the story of Black communities. And I would also just put a little bit of a pill in there to talk about where can we draw from other jurisdictions. And I'm thinking about the Caribbean. We're clearly talking about the Canadian context, but then also Africa. We talk about culture is rising in very phenomenal ways that we've seen during the pandemic. So I know it's a three-part question, but I would really like to hear from the three panelists around the financial supports. And that is where we can, as a community, really do more in the spaces that we're in to provide that support.
I don't know if it's going to cut off right now. Thank you for that, Denise. I don't know what's going to cut off right now. 3 words: earn your leisure. You can start there. That goes back to education. Right now, financial literacy is so important. There's a YouTube podcast, the #1 podcast in the world with financial literacy is Black. It's called Earn Your Leisure. And they give game on all types of entrepreneurship, all type of ways that Black people can, because once we have that, the rest will follow, But financial literacy, Earn Your Leisure on YouTube. That's what I would say. Educate ourselves, because I know y'all said 8 o'clock is gonna cut off. So
no, it won't cut off.
Quick.
It won't cut off at 8. So if you have more to say, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Musa.
No, that's about it. I think that's where the story needs to go. And she was talking about resources. I'm not I've been self-funded since 2010, so I don't know much about grants. I know Kingsley's in here. She knows a lot. I don't know if that's Kingsley that does grants, but yeah. And Gerald, you take it
So
away,
I was
bro.
just going to make the point, Dennis. I think you're right. I think for us in Canada, what we have failed to do is link up with the Caribbean and link up with Africa.
Big time.
There is huge capacity in Africa that could support arts here in Canada. And there's a kind of I would say, aha, with Canadians. As I've traveled around the world, for some reason, we have an image that is not the reality that we are living as Blacks, but from outside looking in, there is a kind of an image. And I don't think we leverage enough of that. And there are institutions that are Canadian institutions. You tax dollars. Every time you go and buy something, you pay tax. It's the money you're giving to government that are actually in Africa to help, quote unquote, propagate Canadian culture. Unfortunately, the Canadian culture that propagate is a white culture. There's not enough of us that knows those systems to allow, maybe in a separate conversation, a separate time, I'll introduce you to someone named Myriam Montra who works for Global Affairs Canada, or someone named Annalisa Bonardi who works for Heritage Canada. These are people that have money, but the people who get the money, never us, because we're not linked in. So the idea of, should we pay as artists some attention to the Caribbean and some attention to Africa, I think you're absolutely right. It opens a bigger market than the white market in Canada, because Blacks makes about 4% of Canada. So that means 96% is not Black. So 96% has no interest in your life experience. So we haven't yet understood how to leverage outside in to build our community. So you're onto something, totally agree with you.
Let's do it.
And Denise, I'll follow up with Gerald to get those names, and a follow-up email will go out to all the participants who registered on Eventbrite. So we'll provide you with that information for sure. So seeing that we're a little over time, I'm going to throw it back now to Sam. Unless there's any other questions that people want to ask, we might be able to have another 2 minutes to answer another question. I don't see any furious typing going on. So I'm going to throw it back to Sam so he can close out. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that was great. I knew it was going to be lit. It was a great combo. So yeah, I just want to wrap it up with something we call a 3 and 3. Basically, we summarize the discussion, and it's super hard to summarize the discussion because there's so much content, but we really want to come away with 3 takeaways and 3 action items that we all can do right now when we shut off the call. So 3 takeaways. The first big one was we need to start thinking about look at us versus look at me. So in the past, we've been very into individual exceptionalism. The value comes from helping other people without expecting anything in return. So that was a huge takeaway. Second thing was what you focus on amplifies you, and it was brought up in a bunch of different ways, but that really exemplifies that quote. And it's really about focusing on impact. There was just some talk about thinking about Malcolm X, for example, the impact that he made versus chasing money, for example. So focus on the positive, focus on the impact. Instead of focusing on the negative, because what you focus on amplifies. And then the third thing, which was super dope, was we're beating the house right now. That was a sick line. We have everything we need.
That's a bar right there.
For real. So we have everything we need. We're good to go. We're beating the house. Let's just make it happen.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And then for action items. So the big one, we hear it in a lot of these panel discussions. Support Black businesses, buy Black art, share other Black artists on social media, go to their events. It's really just about what we can do as individuals. And the second piece of that, which follows nicely, is make a personal commitment. So it's not about changing the world. It's not about changing an entire industry or trying to convince people that, we know what we are. We know who we are. It's time to stop trying to convince other people what we already know where we are. Let's just make a personal commitment to make a difference in one person's life. And as Gerard said, if you're past 1980, then it's over for you. So thank goodness I'm born under that. That was mad jokes, but yeah, focus on the young people, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, because it's really about the youth, right? The youth are the ones who are really going to be the next generation to make a change. And like Gerard said, they haven't internalized the negative narratives that some of those above 1980 have feel. So I'm just over that line.
Yeah.
They say nothing.
Yeah. And then the last action item, super easy. Go cop that book that Mac Newsom mentioned, The Greatest Salesman in the World. I put it on my reading list. As you were talking, I put them on my reading list. I'm going to cop that for sure. So that's a very specific, tangible thing that you can do just to elevate and educate. And so with that, Gerard, Mac Musa, Dorothy, thank you so much for joining us. This conversation was amazing. It was lit. I knew it was going to be lit, and you all did not disappoint. I personally learned a lot. I know the people watching did as well. Thanks to the audience for sharing the space and taking your time to listen and to learn, and also the questions and the engagement in the chat. Hopefully y'all learned a lot too. Hit us up on social media. We want to hear from you. We want to keep the discussion going. And have a good night.
Blessings, man.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, Dorothy. Bye-bye, Musa. We'll be in touch.
Blessings. Most def. See y'all Sunday.
Attend the wedding now.
The hustle
not
files
the wedding,
on
the
Sunday.
event on Sunday.
Yes. Sunday, 4:30,
In the chat. It's in the chat, and we'll share the poster.
Okay.
Spread the
thank
word.
you.
All right.
See you
Blessings,
there.
man.
Bye.
Take care, y'all.
Y'all take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.